Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is Friday, a wonderful Friday, and we're here, Rabbit House Press, with a very special conversation with Bruce Lewis, Michael Blumenthal, and Lubrina Burton. I'm going to introduce you all, but I want to tell you all we're here in celebration of all of their books, but especially the just released Joshua Fragmented by Bruce Lewis. We planned a big party tonight, actually, that we were going to have with Bruce, who was going to read in person. All right, Lubrina's got it too, in person. And we had to postpone that party probably till next spring when we do in-person readings and in-person gatherings. But I want to, but as a special treat, we're going to do these readings online. And so you all can watch it, come back, share it. You can always get these books at rabbithousepress.com. You can also get them on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those other, but they are discounted on rabbithousepress.com. So that's a little incentive. I want to introduce Bruce by reading what on the back of the book, Kentucky's Ed McClanahan said. He as you all, some of you know, he's in the Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame. He's one of the merry pranksters. He wrote The Natural Man and Famous People I've Known. He says Bruce Lewis is a masterful jazz, blues, folk guitarist whose pursuit of his muse took him from Central Kentucky tobacco farm of his boyhood all the way to Budapest, a vibrant center of art, music, fashion, and entertainment, where he remained for almost 2 decades and launched a legendary career playing clubs, music halls, and festivals all over Europe. Now back in Kentucky, he's distilled that experience in fictional form in a fine, wide-ranging novel, Joshua Fragmented, which chronicles the adventures of an errant performer and luckless citizen of the world, Joshua Celeste. To read it is to join him on that poignant odyssey and thereby to treat oneself to a terrific ride. So, Michael, you and Bruce met in Budapest, right?
We did. We met on the set of the movie Evita. Who was Alan Parker, right?
Yeah,
Bruce was the director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually,
I don't know how you.
I got to talk to him.
Because I have a friend who was in a movie of his, but I don't know how Bruce got there. But there was a little ad in a Budapest English language paper, right, that they were looking for extras, and so hundreds of us, right? There were hundreds of us. You had to go in and sing a song. Now Bruce can really sing, but I can't sing. So I sang, "If you miss the train I'm on, you will know that I am gone."
Oh my God.
Anyway, we both wound up getting picked as these extras, members of Perron's cabinet, right, Bruce?
Yeah, right.
Somehow?
Yeah, I've got some people sent me some stills from that the other day.
And they cut off all my hair just like it is now. I had a lot of hair, and they paid us $75 if I remember.
Yeah,
you know, which was the first big money I made in the arts. You too, probably.
yeah. It was like $300 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like you could live for a year in Hungary on that at the time. No, not quite.
Yeah,
What
right.
were you doing? What were you doing, Michael, in Budapest?
I was on a Fulbright teaching at the university there, which lasted for about 4 years. So I was there. I wasn't there 20 years like Bruce, but almost.
And you said you met him. I think you said that when you were on the set of Evita, you met Bruce and he was writing poetry. He was writing some poetry, and Michael is an amazing poet. We're talking about his book that's being released in November, Don't Die. This book will be coming out in November, but for an established poet, a celebrated poet like Michael, to recognize Bruce's talent immediately was pretty exciting.
Well, it was funny because, I knew Bruce was a musician, and so I went to hear him play at some gigs, and I really liked his music. And then I think by that time I had left Budapest. I was living in Israel, and Bruce sent me some poems, which really pissed me off because, I didn't mind being jealous of somebody who could do something I couldn't do, but then the poems were good too. And actually, I sent them to Poetry Magazine. They didn't take them, but I sent them to Poetry Magazine, and because I knew Bruce was too shy,
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought they were really good. I thought, geez, this guy is not only talented, he's even kind of smart. And then the next thing I knew, 20 years later, he shows up with this 3,000-page novel.
It is quite a monster.
Marcel Lewis, they called it.
Yes. I want to read, Bruce, just before you do, I want to read to everybody
Please.
what Michael wrote on the back of Joshua Fragmented. He said, I first met Bruce Lewis over 25 years ago in Budapest, where he was a struggling but obviously talented musician. He showed me some of his poetry then, and I immediately realized that he was also a writer of talent and genuine potential. His large and ambitious first novel, Joshua Fragmented, proves in spades that my initial intuitions about his talent and his willingness to develop it were not misplaced. Whether he's writing about Medina, Kentucky, or the Budapest of Central Europe in the early 1990s, he brings the same keen powers of observation and musical sensibility to wherever his eye and heart take him. This work testifies to a life lived with passion, struggle, and sensitivity, resulting in a work that, despite its length, is not so much fragmented as it is whole. So, Bruce, why don't you go ahead?
Bruce, you still haven't sent me the check for that, have you?
No. It's in the mail. Yeah.
Checks in the mail.
Yeah, sure it is.
Okay, Bruce, why
Except
don't
there's no checking in Hungary. Yeah, remember that? Yeah. They were like, we have these things in the US. You write a check and tell somebody you're going to pay them such and such a money on a little piece of paper, and it's totally cool. They would never understand that in Hungary.
Right. That's true.
So, Bruce, why don't you give us a taste and maybe introduce to hear us? I'm going to put it on speaker view, and you can let us know what we are hearing.
Okay.
Okay.
This is going to be a short one. I think the second one I do will be a little longer, so maybe both together should be under the time limit, I hope. But anyway, this one is fairly short, and this is the protagonist is Joshua for the most part, and he's kind of probably going through a bit of a midlife crisis here, and he's driving his car, and he finds a bar that he's maybe going to look for a gig there at some times, but it doesn't quite turn out the way he wanted to turn out.
Hey, Bruce, say what page you're reading from.
Oh, I'm sorry. Page 43. It starts at, he drove aimlessly. Kind of the start of the second, down the fourth line on page 43. Hopefully I've got this edition might be slightly different than, I remember there were two companies.
I got it. That's fine.
Okay, great. Okay. He drove aimlessly, popping in at the Bardstown Tavern for a moment, walking through the Friday night crowd. Someone he vaguely recognized yelled, "Hey, Josh, how come you ain't playing tonight?" But he only dived deeper into the horde and pretended not to hear. It was a rare weekend off Crazy Reddy at the Joyland Club had given him. That was the club he usually played at. They were remodeling, putting in a new patio bar. That's kind of timely. Now he was on the ground looking up at the stage from the cramped dance floor. It was impossible to order a drink. Big buzz-headed jocks and tall, thin guys in leather jackets jostled him as he tried to make his way through. Chicks with 3 nose rings in each nostril and a chain running to their ear, hair braided Stevie style like an African princess, and painted peach and ladies feather blue, or shaved slick as Isaac Hayes, gave him a bemused or outright disdainful look that brought a tightening to the pit of his stomach. He was not one of them. He reached the other side of the dance floor, almost gasping for breath. He felt a sense of panic, as if the energy of the dance was literally pushing him out of the door, just like the feeling he'd had at Aloysius Pruden's house when he was 8 years old, and dared to get in a pickup football game with his older brother's high school friends. After getting battered around by these cold-hearted, bloodthirsty boys, he proudly hoped for recognition and their respect for injuries he'd suffered and endured. What an honor to be accepted as their equal. The young upstart with the fleet moves, small but fast. Instead, they played keep away, forming a circle around him, laughing convulsively as they lobbed the football over his head while he gave little boy leaps to try and catch it. Once he stumbled and one of the boys threw a bullet pass that soundly smacked him upside the head, coming in at him like the flight of a bat. He lay still for a moment as the laughter faded into a smattering of guffaws. Then he heard Kate, Aloysius's mom, calling everyone in. Heck, Jared, Skeeter, stop bullying the younger boys this minute. Someone's going to get hurt. It's getting too dark to see the ball anyway. Now he's back in the bar. Josh looked out over the strobe-lit sea of faces, the flash of human gesture. He thought he might try to find the booking manager, usually some thick-necked yup or some chick with stiff spray moosed hair and a vicious slash of rouge that looked like it'd been laid on with a putty knife. Thought he'd try to hit him up for a gig, but he changed his mind. He reached the door, feeling the sting of cigarette smoke in his throat. Outside in the parking lot, he threw his head back toward the night sky and saw the Big Dipper leaning toward him as if each star could pierce through him. Behind the wheel, he took a few deep breaths, fastened his seatbelt, and drove home.
Ooh. Bruce,
Okay, yeah.
it's so wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
I love this book. I love, as a writer, as a reader, more importantly, it's just, it is like the older novels that people don't write as much. I compared immediately. I said it's like a Henry Miller or Thomas Wolfe, where it's just like you're literally, it's a feast for the eyes and the senses to read this book. It's really, especially, as you describe the girls.
Sure.
And, as equally as passionately as you describe, I love those scenes, and it just got to the 80s so perfectly.
Yeah.
In the 90s, it was just, I could just see everything. And then, your descriptions.
Well, yeah, the 80s was a bit of a shock for the hippies, I think, sometimes. It was a little bit, so you're a lot younger than me, so you might understand that a little more. Or else, you hear somebody that's older than you say that. But I remember the tipping point was when Reagan won in 80. It was almost like Trump winning. That was the reaction. What? A washed up actor guy is going to be president? And that I think that
your
was
very opinionated mother.
Well, yeah, she was kind of a Reaganite though, but she didn't like Bush. But later she went liberal Democrat. But back in those days, she thought Reagan was cool.
Right.
Like she was my mother. So.
Right, exactly.
Well, a lot of those Hollywood people really liked Reagan a lot, even though he was
Bruce's mother was a movie star back in the 40s, and did a movie called And the Angels Sang. She's also my aunt, Mimi Chandler Lewis. She's my father's sister. And I've always been fascinated, but talk about opinionated. So Bruce, I'm sure that to become an intelligent man it was beaten into him by the time he was 1.5, probably. But anyway, very, very well-read family, first of all. So what do you guys have to say about Bruce's, and you all both read Bruce's book?
Well, you know, it's funny because I really wasn't ready for, you know, and when a friend writes a book, you know, you sort of feel obligated, especially if he asks you to write a blurb, you feel obligated to read it. And so you sit down.
I knew you
and you
would.
think you're right. The money was too good to pass up. But, you know, you sit down and you think, oh shit, I have to read this book. I hope it's not horrible, because very often your friends' books are horrible, you know. And so I sat down in like this very dutiful way to read this book. And next thing I knew, I was just totally into it, you know, and it just took me. And of course, you know, I was also curious because I knew part of it was set in Budapest, but the first part is all set in Kentucky, really, you know, and actually, I said I was jealous, but my wife was reading it recently, and my wife is a much tougher nut to crack than I am. And she always teases me about the fact that she thinks I never pay attention to anything, you know, that I'm just inward and I don't look at anything, I don't notice anything. So every few minutes she would look up and say, God, he's so observant. God, he's got such a memory. God, you know, and I saw each of those as a kind of accusation. You know, he's so observant, unlike you. He's got such a memory, unlike you. You know, he can write just unlike you.
Not a very narcissistic reaction at all. I was just telling, I was just telling Mark,
No, but go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just telling Mark last night, we were watching a show. I was like, you see yourself in every single show. And I was like, you know, he's like, this is like me. So it's like listening to your wife say that you're taking everything in as your own, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, and so, you know, but what was interesting, of course, you know, you see the title and you think, especially as somebody who's also fragmented, you know, you think, uh-oh, here goes another one, you know. But what was very interesting to me was, you know, the book is a little bit like a centrifuge, you know, for me, in the sense that it starts off, you know, for a long time, we're in Kentucky and, you know, we're smelling and seeing and there's music and we're looking at the countryside and the farms and all that stuff and smelling the crops. And then all of a sudden we're in Budapest, you know, and the narrator changes and suddenly the book really kind of fragments, you know. It just takes off in these like 20 directions, you know, with all kinds of changes of narration, time, scene, place, you know. And of course, that was interesting because that was the point where it got a little harder for me to read because I'm kind of a simple-minded guy. I like the kind of story, you know, boy meets girl, girl dies, you know, boy grieves, you know, that kind of stuff. And so it got difficult, but on the other hand, suddenly we're in Hungary, where I've been for almost 30 years. And
where you are calling from right now, by the way.
Where I'm sitting right now. Actually, I thought Bruce and I should be switching places for this. And so suddenly, of course, you know, it got into two of the things in life that I'm most interested in, which was Hungary and sex. And there was a lot of both.
Oh, when I was reading it and I was, you know, thrilled, I was passionate, you know, just loving it. And then all of a sudden come the sex scenes and I was like, well, I guess Rabbit House Press needs its porn section. You know, we need a little bit of sex thrown in there. I can read my share of, you know, Charles Bukowski and all that, but it is, you know, graphically sexual. So lots of people like that aspect as well.
Well, you know, and I think actually the whole book is kind of dominated by this kind of what I would call sensual hunger, which manifests itself in music and literature and women and Hungary and food. And sometimes the sensual hunger gets a little eroticized,
Yeah.
or sometimes even over eroticized.
My ex, I just wanted to interject one thing. My expat friend said, "There's no way this could have really happened to Bruce." And then,
well,
we were with him most of the time.
That's so funny.
No, anyway.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I also wrote an autobiographical novel years ago, and a lot of it was fiction and a lot of it was made up. But
And I have it right here, Mike.
all the sex.
Wow, I want to read that.
No, that's my memoir, but
Oh,
this
this
was a
memoir
novel.
Okay.
of Michael's, by the way, All My Mothers and Fathers. I love this book. This is.
I want to get all these.
Oh, you've got to read.
I've got Against Romance. That's the only one I've got.
Yeah.
Yeah, you better buy more. I need the money. But anyway, you know, the funny thing about that book was there wasn't that much sex in it, but all the sex that was in it was completely invented, never happened, you know. And of course, everybody who read it, they assumed that I had screwed a student in the library, that I had screwed somebody else on the dissecting room floor of a medical school. None of it was true. And even half of the psychoanalytic sessions were made up. There are a lot of psychoanalytic sessions in it. But anyway,
What's the name of that?
So I know that Bruce wasn't quite the ladies' man that he sounds like in this book. But,
what was the name of that book, Michael?
sorry, it's called Wine Stuck Among the Dying.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Stuff on it,
Okay.
yeah.
I haven't read that yet, but I'm going to. That's the one that won the Ribolo Prize.
Right. Yeah, right.
Well,
But when I, you know, I never thought, I happen to like short, simple novels with easy narratives, you know, Madame Bovary, The Great Gatsby, you know. I never in my life thought I would read a novel without simple narrative that goes
well,
500.
that's why it reminds me of like Thomas
pages.
Wolfe, because it reminds me of Henry Miller or Thomas Wolfe who are walking through the streets like, ah! You know, just like running through the streets and then
It's YouTube. Yeah, that's the way I've always thought, though. You know,
just eating everything up and then going here and there. But if I had to, before we move on to another reading, if I had to bet, even though this is fiction, that all of these scenes, most of these scenes were true, I would bet my life that they were. So, okay, Bruce, do you have one more reading for us?
Okay, yeah. Let me. Okay, this is this is really Josh's. I don't. There's not really a plot that can spoil the ending, but this is toward the end, and most of the several of the main characters die off in the book. But
What page, Bruce?
Huh?
What page? What
Oh,
page?
yeah, 512, which is labeled section 226.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so everybody there, I'll go ahead with it. And this is Josh's son, who is kind of looking at he didn't really grow up. This is a fictional character who didn't grow up in Budapest, so he's going to the funeral in making observations about Hungarian mores and their social the way they do things. So he's kind of making some observations, and of course he spent a lot of time in America. A foreigner must look in amazement at the daily life of the host culture. I feel almost like a foreigner here myself, but I grew up in the Lake Valaton region. Then as a teenager, I spent a lot of my time at quote unquote Uncle Crip's house in New Jersey. I helped take care of his aunt, Pearl. But when you get back and start seeing the life of my childhood, every bus ride, trip on the metro, and now every pretty Hungarian girl's flirtatious look or sneer of disdain, the empty eyes of the street bum, every trip to the market, all these are like miniature epics in themselves whose full meanings are hidden. The funeral is the most secret ceremony of all, a time when the spring sun turns its blazing light inward and time, like the sudden slant of a galaxy, is visible as a veil-thin gauze that covers all things. I would never have known how to get there. Uncle Crip offered me a ride to the cemetery, relieved of the daunting prospect of having to find it alone in the vast sprawling suburbs of Budapest. I'd only been back working my job that Crip got me within the expat English language paper Budapest Week for 6 months or so. I quickly took him up on it. I felt like I needed to revisit my roots a bit after, quote unquote, the accident that everyone was calling it. I was finished with Medina University. It was a beautiful spring morning. The plane tree, or the sycamore tree outside my dad's old apartment, I guess I inherited, so barren of leaves through the long cold winter, was full now of sea green leaves as big as the palm of your hand. The linden had already bloomed, covering everything with a thin layer of green dust. The white-winged crow, they don't have those in America, and the mourning dove and the sparrow flitted between their limbs. Sometimes the dove flying right up to my windowsill to coo and beg for the bread I had been putting out for her through the snowy months. The weather was so fine now I became less concerned for them. Surely they could find enough food on their own now, I thought. I ignored their prodding coos, and soon they came less and less. Crip arrived on time, rare for Hungarians, but then he was only half, as this character is probably. And we drove across the Patufi Bridge to Bararo Square, where he turned right and headed toward the 10th district to Pest Erzsébet and Új Kőz to the cemetery. Or Új Kőz, excuse me, I should have said, I said Kőz. For years, my father had carried his burden of cancer. For years, the chemotherapy had prolonged his life. Every few years, he went back to the hospital for treatment, but it never lasted. The cancer, tenacious, bent on its own agenda, seemed always to come back. I got used to the illness. It became such a part of him and our relationship that I began not to question or even think about it. We talked about it, but it was always there, a specter standing unnoticed in the shadows, waiting patiently. One treatment cured him for 2 years, another for 5, another for 3. Death was in no particular hurry, it seemed. My father, though sickly, began to seem invincible to me. Death had come and gone, too shy to claim him, but instead conferring on him some kind of immortality. But then it struck again, quietly but decidedly, drifting from his lymph to his lungs, filling them with water. After months of struggling to breathe again, the doctors were able to clear his lungs and his energy returned. He cannot die now, I thought. Death has tried and failed, yet the pallor remained, the drawn skin. He fidgeted with his lip, darted his eyes like a frightened animal. At 52, he suddenly looked 80. I turned my head away from the photographs. At night, I huddled in my blanket, feeling a sense of invulnerability, reading my book, thinking of thousands of other things. What a wonder medical science is, I thought. And it did give him a few extra years, years of precious light, willowy yellow gold light, spreading its dust of light everywhere, years of water and the moon, of lovemaking with his lady friends and thinking of nothing, food and work, children on their way to school, a lovely traffic jam on the boulevard, a young secretary running to catch a tram, an Arab boy changing money, the stooped shopkeeper with the black mustache, the old woman at the market, the banker in black, rain and clouds and wind, leaves, blooms, a bottle cap, a twig, a dog turd, a used condom, and a million cigarette butts he'd long ago given up smoking. All the detritus of spring, the green grass combed by a quiet zephyr, a young girl's blonde hair shining in the sun. Then one day he opened his eyes, walked down Temple Street past the synagogue, and it was all gone forever. Fragments, Crip said. Doesn't matter now. What throngs explode on the streets of Pest every morning. Crip's old truck rumbled past the bright chaos of the Chinese market. I looked out the window at the streets of endless shoppers and hawkers shifting through the sidewalk stalls, looking for anything that would help them survive. Cheap clothes from India, hanging like washing from a sidewalk rack. A lean-to spice shop 1,000 mobile phones stacked on a table with 100 cigarette cartons, toys, bags of fake leather. For 1,000 years, the multitudes buying cheap stuff from Asia, from the Asians, Asian as they are known here. As we got closer to the cemetery, Crip suddenly turned up onto a curb, making himself a makeshift parking space up on the sidewalk, as is often the custom here. And we walked to the rest of the way, some 100 yards. But then it dawned on me, there is no cemetery. I looked around at the crowds filling the sidewalk, somber families walking slowly toward me down the small incline of a hill, dressed always in black, or else black was the dominant color, men on their lunch hours in dirty clothes, having already paid their respects to a loved one, and now headed back to work. A girlfriend trying to give solace to her bereaved boyfriend by leaning on his arm, touching the tear on his cheek, letting the sunshine through her golden hair, a hint of sexiness in her black dress. I thought of the girl I left behind in Jersey. No, there was no graveyard, only different stone mourning rooms, 20 by 20 foot huts, barely big enough to fit 50 people or so, standing around the bier strewed with flowers, pictures, a stack of CDs, a guitar. There was Lydia. I sometimes wondered what had become of her. No one spoke. We all simply stood in silence, thinking of him to ourselves, thinking of our own imminent death, most of all. But there is no understanding death, his or mine. Silence. Then people began to file out. It's just got one more page. Have I got time to read that much? Or
Sure.
should I? Okay, well, I'll keep going for a second. Afterwards, I spoke with Lydia and shook her now thin, wrinkled hand. She looked stoic. Perhaps the invincibility towards death I described to Dad was still living in her. I embraced her grown children. She gave me her card. I stepped back out into the blazing spring light and chatted with a few old friends, Dad's bandmates. Beyond, there were the multitudes again walking up and down the endless flower shops and stonecutters' yards. Mourners can buy flowers on the way in, and families barter with stonecutters on the way out. Always the living buying and selling here, even in the temple of death. But not for gravestones do they haggle. A crowded metropolis of some 3 million people hasn't room for that, unless you're rich and you can buy a grave in Wolfsfield. It's Farkash Reich. By the end, Dad was just a poor cafe musician. Crip kept apologizing, but I said it didn't matter to me. Mother sent a card, she said to give to Crip. I would be giving to the beautiful lake later. I would be going to the beautiful lake later to stay with her a few months. Agnes was many years dead, and Judge Daddy's wealth long gone. A wall of smartly cut boxes stacked like post office boxes would be my father's final resting place. Everywhere the memories of the dead outnumbering the living, everywhere the weeping family, a grand convention of death and sorrow I had come upon, the likes of which I'd never seen in America. No cars, the poor walking up and down the hill where they came by tram, the distant trams of the projects, quote unquote, those crumbling high-rise domino buildings, quote unquote, that encircled the old city. These are really kind of like, like in the Bronx or something, those big apartment buildings that go row after row to row. They encircled the old city, whose numbers I'd never seen and seemed strange to me, having grown up in Mom's first Carolet or first district. Tram number 424, the number 8, the 13. The figures loomed out of the station like secret codes. Crip still called this his hood. I have dim memories of it. I remember jackhammers pounding, a lot of construction after '89 and the end of the communist era. The unexplainable, the question, the circus of the unknown swirling about the crowd. Crip had to get back to work, so I offered to just walk alone to the metro. I told one last dirty joke Dad had loved, the one about the nun in the holy water. Crip always laughs as if he would keel over from laughter. His face gets red, his eyes bug out. An amazing laugh. We embraced, shook hands, and parted. I had rarely seen him in the last few months. Dad's illness had come between us in an unintentional way. His health, it seemed, was the unseen bridge of our friendship. All the faces I saw, everyone had aged, A few middle-aged women, some weeping, comforted by Hungarian men in sunglasses. A pall drifted through the sociability. 1,000 years, 25 years, it hardly mattered. Time, the rumpled street sweeper, pulled his creaking cart behind him, sweeping it all up. The dust, the sand, the litter, the clouds, the planets, the stars. When I left the place, I saw the other multitude beyond the vast cemetery. I had taken no notice of me or my dad. They had taken no notice of me or my dad's death. They were innocent, walking without death in the sun, not thinking of his death or mine or theirs, walking without moving their pale spring arms, sun glinting off legs, no one even seeing me. Death had thrown its protective cloak about me for the moment. Buses fill and then pull out in one burst of smoke. Quickly, another crowd gathers. Pensive mothers, their stricken faces softened by pale young skin. Fathers, and their eyes downcast, thinking out a plan for survival, going up and down the hill again and again to become ashes, and then the colorless gold of blazing spring sky.
Thank you, Bruce. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I went on too long there.
No,
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 that was great.
it was wonderful. Let me go back here. Okay, everyone, please get this. I'm sorry we're not in person and we can't, line up and have Bruce sign it, but I will get Bruce to sign like 50 copies of his book. And if you want me to have it personalized and sign it to you, I'll get him to sign it. If you go to rabbithousepress.com, rabbithousepress.com, and order the book, and in the messages say who you would like it inscribed to. And if just send it, and I'll send you, if you get the book by on our website, it'll either be signed personalized or just signed by Bruce. I'll make sure that he signs a bunch of copies. So get the book now. You can also, as I said, if you'd prefer just to go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble, it's at Black Swan Bookstore. It is at Joseph Beth's and some other local bookstores. But anyway, get this.
You might want, let me interject this. You might want to contact through Rabbit House Press, Rick Bennett, and he did the cover art,
yes.
and people have just gushed over the cover art even more than the book. They love the art.
Did an amazing, a fellow musician friend and amazing artist did this cover for us. Corbin Keys is our wonderful designer. And I want to thank her. She did an amazing job, exterior and interior. But thank you so much, Bruce, and congratulations.
Thank you, Aaron, so much for publishing it.
Bruce.
I want to now move on and give you all a sneak peek. We'll do hopefully another full hour with just Michael when the book is published in November. But Rabbit House Press is thrilled to put out Michael Blumenthal's next poetry collection, Don't Die. This is the advanced reviewer copy. The book's coming out in November, but I want to introduce Michael by reading a little bit of his bio and then a few words that some people have praised him. Michael Blumenthal is a celebrated poet, essayist, and novelist who spent a decade as the Briggs Copeland Lecturer in Poetry and the director of the Creative Writing Program at Harvard University. A Guggenheim Fellow and recipient of the Watermark Poets of North America First Book Prize, Juniper Prize, and Isabella Stewart Gardner Prize. He lived in Budapest, Hungary from 1992 to 1996, which he's calling from now or zooming from now as senior Fulbright lecturer. Blumenthal's novel Weinstock Among the Dying won the Ribelo Prize for Best Work of Jewish Fiction. Garrison Keillor, who we all love, wrote, "I've never met Mr. Blumenthal, but we've become close friends through his poetry. He and Rex Roth and Kuhlman and Swinson, good company." Seamus Haney said Michael Blumenthal is one of the natural poets of his generation. And I'll read one more. There's so many praises. If you go to anywhere and look him up, you'll see. Edward Hirsch, the winner of the National Book Critics Poetry Prize and the president of the Guggenheim Memorial Foundation, said Michael Blumenthal's quick wit and clever puns, his cranky, rueful, well-made poems can't hide the mortal pain that drives and invigorates this book of late intensities and humane understandings. Don't Die is a lively intervention, a book of mourning and celebration. So this is coming out in November. So I want to introduce Michael. Now I'm going to put it on speaker view. Oops. And Michael, if you would grace us with a little reading, we'd be so happy.
Sure. This is Bruce's party, so I'm just like a, dessert,
Your dessert.
appetizer. So I'm just going to read one poem, and actually, it's the last poem in the book and the last poem I wrote. I don't usually put new poems in my books. I usually wait to make sure that I won't regret it. But this one just seemed to fit. So I'll just read it. It's kind of longish anyway. Poets have the advantage over fiction writers. The only place where poets have the advantage is giving readings, because we actually read something that's finished. When it's over, it's over. So anyway, this poem is called, and it was actually written here in Hungary. It's called It's Fantastic. It's fantastic to be young and naked and fucking on a flat stone in the St. Lawrence Seaway beneath the late summer sun. It's fantastic to feel immortal, that there are no dark clouds hovering. Fantastic to feel your flesh and that of your beloved will always be firm and supple and eager for pleasure. It's fantastic to wake each day, flush with desire and hormones and appetites reaching in every direction. Fantastic to live in a world without limits, where abstinence is sinful and the vast termite mound of possibilities rises each day like the grapes of Tantalus, hands reaching for them in every direction. And it's fantastic to be one of those chosen for the confluence of sperm and egg. Fantastic to have defied all the odds and been uttered out into the ambiguous universe. It's fantastic to be able to move your fingers over the keys and make words. It's fantastic that some of those words will have meaning. Fantastic that the very same words may make someone laugh or weep in far off Burkina Faso. And it's fantastic too, that I'm no closer to perfection now than I have ever been, no closer to sainthood. Fantastic that hypocrisy is alive and well within me, and that I will never be the angel others want me to be. And this is as far as I have come and as far as I'm capable of going. And it's horrible that we are all dying and will do so in time, with or without our loved ones there beside us. It's horrible that Calvino was right, and the ultimate meaning to which all stories and poems aspire has two faces, the continuity of life and the inevitability of death. It's perfectly horrible, yes, that in a few years I will no longer be here, looking out my window at my Hungarian backyard. I will no longer be able to watch the nuthatches wedge their seeds into the crevices of the trees, no longer spend summer mornings swimming in Lake Balaton, no longer be able to look back upon my many follies, for my follies will be over. But it's also fantastic to be old and no longer so interested in fucking. Fantastic to arrive at the dead-end street of desire and find that love begins there.
Fantastic to be sitting on this raft in the middle of Lake Balaton on a brilliant June morning and to feel this fly on my arm. Yes, it's fantastic to navigate between the shit of the gulls and the shit of the terns to find a clean place to sit. Fantastic to be free of lust and see the world again as you saw it emerging from the womb and not need to cry out for your mother or anyone else's mother and cling to her dress sobbing when she drops you off at school. Yes, it's fantastic to be free of all that, free to love only the air and the nothingness ahead, free simply to take in the stupefying beauty of this world, the many brilliant organisms and their incredible little mating dances, and to know that you have done what you have done and that you will get done what remains to be done. And that now it is the turn of others to have their hearts broken and frolic in the sun and hallucinate upon a bush and picnic naked on Wellesley Island, watching the Asian fishermen troll for northern pike. And it's fantastic not to be dead yet, though at times you've wished you were. It's fantastic to know that once upon a time it was you fucking on that stone, and that now it's the turn of others. It's all fantastic, friends. Once the pain subsides, the entire show from start to finish, it's fantastic to be, to have been, to become, and still to hope there will be some strange miracle by which we may all somehow live in peace, and that someday, in some form, we may yet come again. Light verse.
Oh my gosh, it just makes me cry. That was so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I don't even want to try to say anything. It just moves me so much. This book, I am so proud that you allowed us to publish it at Rabbit House Press.
Well, I'm proud of you too.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I just love that. That's what a poet is, everybody. That's what a poet is. And there's so many that I love in here that I want you to read, like the one, that we'll do in November. Like we said, this is Bruce's festivity, but one at the bookstore is one of my favorites. This is when he's walking through the bookstore, is one of my favorites. Well, everybody, November 11th comes Don't Die by Michael Blumenthal. And
you're going to publish my book on Veterans Day, even though I'm a draft dodger.
Oh yes, you're saying that is Veterans Day. As we're introducing Lubrina now, but yes, then you'll be able to get it at rabbithousepress.com and all the bookstores and everywhere all over the country and other countries all over the world. What's so funny is now that I'm introducing Lubrina, we were laughing because her book is about the Army, and they're like, she knows that she's here with two draft dodgers, right? And
my son was in the National Guard, so I get a reprieve.
You get a reprieve.
I got cut off right before I was supposed to. My lottery number was pretty bad, but then Nixon pulled the plug, so I didn't have to actually go to Canada.
Well, everybody, Lubrina, are you you're not on mute, are you?
No.
Well, I am very proud and excited to introduce you all to something that's coming in 2022. This is truly the dessert of this party. Lubrina Burton has written the most amazing memoir called Shitbag. And it's called Shitbag because that's what they called her in the Army all the time. Is come on, Shitbag, come here. I met Lubrina last year when I was teaching a class at the Carnegie Center, and there were about 10 people in the class. And the minute Lubrina started reading, I was just no, like she's truly an amazing writer, my kind of writer. I mean, straight from the heart. Amazing, true voice. such an individual voice, and you all will hear it right now. Not only her accent, but her voice, her literary voice. And so we don't have a book cover because we haven't made the book yet, but this book will be coming out in 2022. And Lubrina is a graduate of EKU, Eastern Kentucky University. And she was in the Army from 1997 to 2001, from where she has written about her experiences. And I'm going to do the speaker view now. And Lubrina, thank you for being here with us and giving everybody a little taste of what's to come next year from Rabbit House Press.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a real honor.
It's great.
So I'll read from the prologue just to give you a little bit of an introduction.
Okay.
It's called High Speed, Low Drag. And I was in the Army from, like you said, 1997 to 2001. I spent some of my time in Germany. Names, places have been changed to protect some of the innocent, some of the guilty. So I'll go ahead and start. High speed, low drag. Time slows and space compresses into singularity. My brain snaps off pictures like a Polaroid that only later develops. In one picture, I see gray skies through a soaked windshield and wiper blades useless in the downpour. Then there's an image of the wet pavement of the Autobahn slow lane whirling in my passenger side window. In the next photo, there's a sign for the town of Airbear. Then there's a blurry pic of the blue Ausfahrt sign that's to the right of center in the frame. And there's another snapshot of the car's speedometer reading just over 140 kilometers per hour. When my eyes fail to see, my body races a record to fill in the blanks. I feel a hard pull as I gas it to change into the right lane to make my exit. Then I feel my left foot on the clutch as I let off the gas, my right hand downshifting, my right foot on the brake, the car skidding, almost floating, my frantic turning of the wheel. I'm pushed and pulled as the car cuts a hard left off-road through the grass between the Autobahn and the exit ramp. My foot hits the brakes, but nothing. I clamp my eyes shut and pull my body in on itself. I blink my eyes open, helpless in the driver's seat as I plow down white reflector posts staked into the ground. One by one, in the nice rhythmic order, clunk, 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 they go down under my car, but they do nothing to slow my speed. My car is high speed, low drag, as they say in the Army. I'm barreling full speed straight ahead towards the giant Ausfahrt sign looming overhead. I pump the brakes again, but nothing. I grab onto the steering wheel as I see it racing towards my face. When it's inches away, I tell myself, I can do this, I can survive. My mind goes black. It comes back online a few minutes later. I find my back plastered to my seat. I have no idea where I am or what I'm doing here. I look out the windshield. Smoke is billowing from the front. The signpost is pushed halfway back into the hood. Except for a hissing sound coming from somewhere outside, I hear nothing except the beating of my heart. Or maybe it's the sound of a migraine forming because my head feels ready to explode. There's something tight squeezing my chest wall. I start to panic and wheeze under its compression. I frisk the front of my body and feel a narrow ribbon of nylon crisscrossing my breast. Oh my God, I say, hearing the trembling of my own voice, my seatbelt. Only then do I realize it was an accident, but somewhere from the depths of my subconscious, I wonder if the Freudian cliche that there are no accidents is really true. I fumble with the seatbelt mechanism, but I can't get it to release. I sit for a minute and run my hands along the circumference of the buttery soft leather sports steering wheel. This is one of the things that drew me to the Silver 3 Series when I first arrived in Germany. I wouldn't know or even care at 20 when I bought it that it was the 15-year-old seatbelts on the 85 Beamer that would prove most valuable. Staring at the center of the steering wheel, I see the clean, crisp blue and white circular logo staring back at me like some unblinking eye. I almost feel the need to apologize that the car sacrificed itself to save me. I don't deserve to be saved. I don't know if I want to be saved. My car, I scrunch up my face. I want to cry, but I'm an American soldier and I've learned to express all manner of emotion as anger. My fucking car, fuck, fuck, fuck. I bang my fist against the center of the wheel. When my hand stops shaking enough for me to free myself from the seatbelt, I get out to survey the damage. From the front, I see the post has squeezed the bumper into a V shape and wedged itself into the hood just in front of the engine block. The headlights are hugging the pole and almost kiss one another. With a bent and twisted sign painted deep into the BMW and the odd-looking word of Ausfahrt, meaning exit, dangling over, strikes me this must be the universe's weird attempt at German modern art, some statement on the affairs of things. I stare in stunned silence as smoke and oil pour out, trying to make out the meaning of it all. Within minutes, 2 cars pull up behind me. German passersby rush out of their sedans. An older motherly lady runs towards me, wailing. She doesn't know I'm American. In German, she says, oh my God, bist du okay? She throws her arms around me, pulls me back from the car, as if she needs to both comfort and protect me. I stumble backwards, taking in more of the damage. It looks worse the longer I stare at it. Finally, in a sad German monotone, I reply, Ich bin okay, aber mein Auto, this is kaputt. She recognizes my accent or my bad German or both. Oh, you're American, she says in English. I nod, but repeat, my car. She responds, shaking her head, rubbing my arm. That doesn't matter, you're okay. I shake my head. A young, yuppie guy in glasses, dressed in expensive-looking slacks and a blazer, gets out of his new model Audi and goes into action. He throws off his blazer and gets down on his hands and knees in the rain and muck with no regard to his pressed trousers with shine Oxfords. He sticks a piece of plastic in what looks like an old hubcap or something underneath my car where it's leaking. I wonder where he found that, but I don't ask. He says something to me in German, but the words buzz over my head and I don't respond. The people, the scene, all unfold around me as if I weren't even there. She's American, the lady says. In beautiful English, the man tells me we have to keep my car from leaking fluids onto the ground. The Polizei, he slips back into German. I mean the police, they'll give you a ticket. It looks like a former war zone on the side of the road. It smells something burning, rubber maybe, and the fumes from the gas and oil mixed together into something noxious that makes me cough. From where my car sits in its muddy grave, all the way back to what must be 1,000 feet to the off-ramp, the tires have dug 2 deep trenches. A third vehicle parks in the distance on the shoulder of the off-ramp. It's a company van. A young man, slim, short, with brown hair, gets out wearing the blue coveralls of the German worker. It's not until the guy is right upon me that I realize it's my boyfriend, Marcus. I'm only used to seeing him in his civvies. In the nearly 10 months that we've been together, I don't think I've ever seen him in his work clothes. I'm still catatonic, but the realization that the army's going to kill me for what I've done is growing. Are you okay? Marcus asks in German. Your face, you're white as a ghost. Before I can stop myself, I put my arms around his neck. I'm so happy to see him. I didn't call him, but here he is. He slides my hands off his neck and slips out of my embrace. He steps several feet back. He looks around to see if anyone saw. His cheeks redden with the embarrassment of such a public display. I draw my arms and look down. A hot flush of emotion warms my own face. Yes, I'm fine, I say in my native tongue. He has a limited command of English. I want to annoy him for shrugging me off, for making me feel embarrassed at forgetting I'm always a soldier, even in my time off. But I hesitate. My car. I can only speak of my car. I'm unable to find the words in English or German to explain how I survived the crash only to be killed at the hands of the United States Army. I look back at the scene and over his shoulder at the van parked in the distance. What are you doing here anyway? I ask in English. He cocks his head like a puppy he doesn't understand, so I ask again using German in a harsher tone. He tells me his boss sent him from Bimmelberg on a job to repair some HVAC system here in Erdbeer. He asks me what I was doing here, where I was going. I tell him the only thing I know that makes sense. I get off work early on Thursdays. I was just driving, I guess. I just needed to get away from the army. He gives me a puzzled look, then glances at his watch. He tells me he's late for work. He turns away. He turns towards the van, but stops and shakes his head. Shouldn't be driving on the Autobahn in the rain. It's dangerous. I narrow my eyes at him. He doesn't understand danger since he's lived a coddled, safe life in the same home for 18 years. He doesn't know what it's like to leave home at 17 for the army or travel across the Atlantic at 20 to start a whole new life. He doesn't even understand that death literally stalks me down every road, every hallway, and it jumps out from behind every corner. He probably can't understand why I go looking for death, why I tease it, bait it, dare it to come find me. He doesn't understand how my reality, my world, my image never seemed to align with that of the Army's. How could I make him understand what it is that I am, what the Army says I am? I am a soldier, soldaten. I'm an American, Amerikanerin. But how do I translate shitbag?
Ah, Lubrina,
Very
you're a rock star. Lubrina's a rock star. So
That was great.
brilliant.
that was really great. I'm so excited for everybody to read the whole thing. Well, you all, we're gonna wrap it up with thanks so much to Lubrina for that sneak peek at Shitbag that's coming out in 2022, and Michael for making me cry that I'm like, oh, much with that last one. And Bruce for his wonderful, wonderful reading and celebration of Joshua Fragmented.
Thank you, dear cousin Aaron.
Thank you. You all wanna-
Thanks so much, Aaron.
Thank you. You all want to say anything to anybody that took the patience to listen to us for this last hour?
Thank you all so much. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
I hope,
And
take care. We'll see you in America soon, Michael.
I hope if I don't die.
You won't die. Don't
No,
die. Don't
Don't
die.
Just
die.
kidding.
Don't die.
Bad joke.
I know, bad
Okay.
joke. Okay, I appreciate you all so much. Thank you all, whoever listened, and we will talk to you next time. Mwah.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.